Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Yes, friends, it is that time again. Thanks very much for listening to Tiger Claw Radio. I am your host, Critical Failure, and this week we're going to take a departure from battleofthebits.org. I went to visit chipmusic.org, which I haven't done in a while, and I just looked around. It's not the fastest moving site, but the chiptunes that come out of it, I think, are a notch above everything else. So we're going to play something from chipmusic.org. I got a little bit about GameFAQs.com, revisiting that site for the first time in a while, and a couple other things. So let's see what chipmusic.org has to offer. So the first track that caught my eye was from Cubby the Box, and it's Bit Crush, the Game Boy remake from Dancing Chips Collection 2. Track made in Furnace, and he has some links. You can download the track and some awesome stuff, and it's really cool. So I'm going to put a link to this over on the Discord if you want to pick up a copy of the track for yourself. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. More when we come back. Boys and girls, we are back again in the studio, and before I open up the bag and see what we have recorded this past week, let's head over to the mystery track / mystery game. This has been something fun that I've been doing for the past couple of months, and I go get a song, and then it's from a classic game. You got to try and figure out what the game's from. So I went a little bit easier this week. The game that I picked is a game that everybody has played, I'm sure, at least once. And I have a track from late in the game that we're going to listen to. And if you don't figure it out, by the end of the show, I'll play a track from earlier in the game, and I'm sure you'll get it right away. So here we go. This is the mystery track for this week's game. This is a pretty short track, so I'm inclined to just let the whole thing play out. I'm not sure I would get this if I didn't hear it in the context of the actual game. Good game too, man. Alright, I think that's the loot point, right? So there you go. Take a minute, see if you can figure it out. What game is that from? And we're going to revisit that later in the show. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Warhammer because that was kind of last week's show, but I did spend some time with Warhammer 40k Space Marine Anniversary Edition. If you remember, I got into Bolt Gun, which was like their boomer shooter that came out just a little while ago. It's probably a couple years ago by now. And Space Marine is like the third-person shooter that was sold alongside it, so I managed to get it in the big sale for like, I don't know, $8. And then I went a little higher so I could get all the stuff. So I sat down with it, and this is probably not fair to say, but it reminds me an awful lot of Gears of War. Just because it's a third-person shooter, and all the dudes are like way overly huge with the armor and stuff. But I know that's not really fair to compare it to Gears of War because of that, because Warhammer I think is a lot older than Gears is. But it definitely reminds me of another time, like when the Gears of War games were really popular, and these third-person shooter games were big. Hang on a second, let me see if I can do something about that static. Is that better? I think it's better. Yeah, so there was a time, and this came out in, according to the Steam page, 2011. So there definitely was a time when these kinds of third-person shooters or cover-based shooters were really popular. Now this one, I don't know if you could call it a cover-based shooter because there isn't a button you can press to duck behind a wall, but there are like chest-high walls everywhere, conversely. So I don't know. It was really cool to play it immediately after Bolt Gun because a lot of the weapons were familiar, which I think is like I'm doing it in reverse. When Bolt Gun came out, I think they expected some of the user base to be familiar from like the older games. So for me, it's kind of backwards. But I don't know. I dig it. None of the guns are perfect. So they did a good job balancing them in that way. So you really have to switch between them. Whereas when I played Bolt Gun, it was like the Bolt Gun, the SMG that you start with was like the best gun. And there were occasions where you'd have to switch to other things, but that was the gun. Whereas in this case, you start with sort of SMG sort of thing that you get early on, and it's good, but it's not quite powerful enough, and it doesn't. You don't have enough ammo to use it all the time, and then so you got to switch around. And then there's a rifle that you can has some zoom action that you can use for the sniping, and I really like the sniping in the game because they gave the map design gives you opportunities to use that. If you're clever and if you're fast, there's certain places where you can like pick off enemies before they come at you and stuff. And it's just a really enjoyable experience. It's a lot harder than Bolt Gun. I'm playing on normal and I die quite a bit. And when you die, it's another way you can tell it's older. When you die, there's consequences for death. You get sent back to the last checkpoint, and as far as I know, I don't think save scumming is an option. In Bolt Gun you can save scum the same way you did in Doom, 30 years ago or however long it's been by now. So there's because of that, there's like a constant tension when I play it. So yeah, Space Marine is pretty good. It's slower paced. It's a hell of a lot slower paced than a boomer shooter or whatever they call what they're calling it now. There's certain tropes that were popular at the time that I see, like removing the ability to dash during one of their like audio cutscenes, like half cutscenes when the characters start talking. That's a pain, but it's been a good game so far. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Here's another one for you. I've been going to GameFAQs.com pretty regularly now. I think it was Hemrock who really turned me back onto this. It's a site I used to go to a lot back in 2005, 2006, around that era. And the forums are not they're a shell of their former self, but most of the old content is still here. All the old FAQs are still here, and I love that stuff, man. If you can find a game that you're interested in from I don't know what the era is, but you find one of these old FAQs and they're raw text, so they take up virtually no space if you wanted to copy them. And what device cannot operate a text file? Like at one point, I remember putting a bunch of FAQs, like text files. I remember putting them on like an MP3 player that I had that just had a screen that could look through text files. They say, oh, here's the e-reader, and then it would, open a text file, and then I could sit there and read like the Tomb Raider FAQ or something like that, something that has like a lot of reading to it, on an MP3 player. This is budget electronics. GameFAQs was amazing for that. So one of the staples of the site that's always sort of been there is their poll of the day. So I thought I'd pop in today and see what it is. So this is being recorded on Friday, March 28th, this little bit. So let's see what they got for their poll of the day. And the question is, do you keep a backup of the data on your computer and or other devices? Yes, I back up my important data. Yes, I have a hard drive that's automatically updated. Yes, I have a backup hard drive and I manually copy files regularly. No, probably should, or no, because there's nothing important I'd miss if everything crashed. So for me, yes, I have a backup hard drive and I manually copy files. That's how I do it. I bought a 5 terabyte external hard drive, and any like personal data, like all my TCR stuff, it all goes there. If anything happens to this tower, or if there's a catastrophic crash, which we've had before in my house, then I can pull that external hard drive and plug it into anything. And we got a bunch of machines. I can manually move it over to another machine, and boom, there you go. And that, as it turns out, is the most popular option by a lot. 37.17% said that, whereas 29% said no, but I probably should, and 15% said no, but there's nothing important I have. So yeah, all right. So let's hear it for external hard drives. I got to say, my 5 terabyte external hard drive, which I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it was about $100, give or take. That was a really good purchase, man, because that thing has a bunch of movies. Like I can plug it into, some sort of Android box, which I did at one point, and watch movies on it. I have all of my GOG games. There's a folder for GOG games, and then each GOG game has its own folder, and the offline setups are backed up as well as the goodies. GOG.com. Most people, will tell you, hey, it's DRM free. You can own all your games. Yeah, but you have to go through doing something like this in order for that really to be the case. If you think about it, if GOG went down today, how many of those games would you still have? And the question for me is all of them, except for like probably the last 5 or 10 games I bought, because it's been a while since I backed everything up. But maintain a little backup for your GOG stuff, because that's really that site's strong suit. So you got to put that to work for you, in my opinion. So there you go. That's the GameFAQs.com question of the day. All right, boys and girls, let's give it another shot. You ready? Well, clearly it's a Game Boy game. And like I said, everybody who had a Game Boy played this game at least once. I had a copy myself. And I went through more than one copy because somebody at school stole it. If you don't know, that's all right. We're going to revisit this again in a bit. Heading back to chipmusic.org and looking around, to give you an idea how slow the site moves, there's a bulletin when you first open the website on top that shows like recommended songs or trending songs or whatever. And they go by Facebook likes, and the ones that are the highest rated are like over a year old in that case, for the most part, which is why I don't come here like all the time. It's pretty rare. But this one was uploaded on March 26, 2025. Now, right now, I'm recording this on the 1st. So that's almost a week ago. That's 6 days ago. And it's from Yerzmye, Yerzmyey. Now, I don't know how to pronounce that, but I sure as heck recognize that name. That's a guy who's got albums up on 8bitpeoples.com. He's been around, 8-bit collective era, that kind of thing. Old guy in the scene for a long time, and this is what he writes. The name of the song is No Tracker, and the description is, hi, after like 5 years, just a small song. Yerzmye, No Tracker, copyright 2025. Atari 520 ST plus Yamaha PSS 680 digital synthesizer. YM3420 chip for 2-operator FM synthesis, and the YM3419 chip for PCM drums. Cubase sequencer has been used, plus lots of recording studio effects. All right, I'm excited. Let's give it a listen. So that, like the last track, is going to have a link in the Discord where you can head over to when you can head over to chipmusic.org and get yourself a copy of that MP3, as well as view his link, his description, which has, let's see, does it have something in here for an album? No, there's just a single song, but you can go get yourself a copy. And with that, boys and girls, we're just about at the 20-minute mark, and this is the part of the show where I thank the Patreon sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. They give of their resources to make sure we can keep coming back every week, and it's been beyond solid. Thank you guys so much. I don't give a whole lot of Patreon extras. There's not like a ton of podcasts that are behind the paywall, and the reason is I want the podcast to be for everybody, so these guys go above and beyond and give anyway. So as an old tradition, I read their names off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen, and they are Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and EmeraldRangers.com. Thank you guys so much for keeping the show alive, and I hope you're enjoying the party. I spent some time recently working with a program that I got off of Steam called the Nonsensical Video Generator. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Nonsensical Video Generator. And it's a cheap little program. If I head to the shop, it's $1.99. That's what it is. And what it does is you feed in, I know I've talked about this before, you feed in a video and it chops it up and makes like a cheap YTP. And I've done this internally for fun. I think last Thanksgiving I fed in like the Garfield Thanksgiving special, and I posted it on the Discord just for a good time, and that's a thing. So here's the reason I bring this up. A couple weeks ago we had this thing where I mentioned the nextaround.net, and Sean was like, "Man, that hurts that you're like, remember that's my site," And so if you're not familiar with the next round, because I know not everybody is who listens to this at this point. YouTube, right, used to be a place where you could go and, most people would watch their subscriptions and whatnot. And over the years, that has changed to when people go to YouTube, they tend to watch their like recommended videos. And since that shift happened, which has, been a long time now, these little groups, little groups would form and make pages, little websites, kind of like the way Retroware TV did, or Screw Attack or something like that. And they became important because these groups were how you'd find small YouTubers. Another really, really good one is the Cartridge Club. They did a lot of excellent work. Well, the next round was one of our groups, similar to Emerald Rangers, except a little bit less oriented on the written word. It was Sean and Six Health the Fury, and I jumped on myself and a couple other people. And there was posts, we'd do our thing and we'd make our post. And basically the way these things go is you make your post, and the people who see it are usually just the other contributors, and that's fine. You have your little clubhouse, and it's still really cool. And that, when we mentioned it a couple weeks ago, it brought to the forefront that site had died, and I didn't really like that. It's Sean's site, and Sean had been making the Beastcast, and he brought it back to life, and it hasn't been this alive in years. So he's been posting the Beastcast, and so I started posting TCR there, and it's just the Beastcast and TCR, both of which I think also appear on EmeraldRangers.com. So I thought, okay, we need a little something that's for the next round. And so I had this idea where I'd open a new YouTube channel, and make it like the next round YouTube channel, and I would just post these nonsensical video generator videos there, just cheap, just cheap nonsense. I would post it on the next round, and there you go. Now we have a next round exclusive feature, and that's what I did. So I started by making a video that, like, I fed in RoboCop and RoboCop 2, and it took a while to figure out the quirks of the program, and I posted that there, and I did one of Sean, just his videos, his face videos, and that was really funny, and I posted that there, and I spent some time with it over the last couple days, and I produced a couple other ones that haven't been posted yet. I was working with the Back to the Future series, and just last night I did one of the movie The Cube, or excuse me, just Cube. It's called Cube, which was a Canadian horror movie where you got a bunch of people trapped inside of a cube, and they're going from one to another, and there's traps and stuff. It's a really weird movie, but it's also, really, really good, in my opinion. It's sort of like a unique thing. There's not really anything else like it. But so I took that movie and I fed it in, and a couple other slasher movies, and I have a nice little collection of these terrible YTPs that I'm going to post over the coming weeks on thenextround.net. And the idea is, Monday, Tuesday, when the show comes out, that's when the podcast comes out. And then we'll do our terrible YTP like halfway through the week, Wednesday, Thursday, that kind of thing. And there you go. So that was, it's been weird, but that was $1.99 well spent. Nonsensical video generator. Anybody who likes the old school YTP format that used to be prevalent on YouTube 15 years ago might enjoy it for a while. I think it's aptly priced, and there you go. So that said, let's shift gears and go back to video games for a minute. I made a post that I saw over on the Discord. And usually when I'm clicking around on my phone and there's something that I want to mention on the show, I'll take a screenshot and I'll drop it in the chat. And I think 2 weeks ago, I don't know if I actually got around to mentioning this on the air, but it was like the next Evercade game. They put Tomb Raider, Last Revolution, and Chronicles together in a single cartridge for $30. And when I saw that, I was like, man, you can get those games for $1 a piece on PC. But that isn't what I wanted to bring up. We scroll down a little bit, and something I saw just yesterday, and it's about Steam. And if you're not familiar, Steam is getting ready to retire support for Windows 10. And that happens in October. I don't have the date, but I think it's like 27th or something like that. Somewhere in October, Windows kills support Steam support dies for Windows 10. And it's a weird thing. I don't know why this is happening. I suspect there's more to it than just that, right? Back in the day, Steam ended support for XP, and like the people who, there was some people upset who were like old hangers-on of XP. They're like, hey man, there's games that are only going to work on XP. But at least I can say at that time XP was like an old operating system, so you could kind of say, well, I mean, they can't support it forever or whatever, but it kind of made sense even though I didn't like it. This is the point I'm making. But Windows 10 is not that old. I mean, Windows 11 hasn't been around that long, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what the life cycle is for an operating system, in the Windows line, but it's like at least 5 years or something. So the headline is 43% of Steam is still on Windows 10 with support ending in 7 months. And that's wild to me. I've got a set-top box PC that I bought. And I'm not talking about my Android box. I'm talking about an actual Windows PC set-top box. It cost me like $100. That I got a couple years back, runs Windows 10. And I got it specifically because I wanted it to be a Steam machine. I have a certain number of games on Steam that are only fun or only playable when you play it local multiplayer, right? Steam has a nice array of fighting games. When the fighting games are the best, when you've got people to play with. So that thing is going to go in the garbage. And I just, man, it blows my mind. And while this is happening, over on GOG.com, another competing entity, they're having their own financial troubles. They're all I'm hearing from GOG is bad news, and now they're rolling out a subscription service where it's like, hey, subscribe to us and you could get all the games. They don't put out enough games often enough to warrant a subscription service, in my opinion. Now that may be because I've had a collection there for so long that I've been able to just one by one trickle in my games, but it's like, that's not looking good for GOG. When I heard that, I fired up the external hard drive and I put more of my GOG games on it. I was like, look, all right, let's assume for a minute that my GOG collection dies tomorrow. Let's start backing stuff up. So I backed up the 3 Resident Evil games that came out last summer, and I backed up the Dino Crisis games, and then a few smaller ones that I just spot checked to see if I had them backed up already. And they were like the original Metal Gear and like some of the gold box games and stuff like that. And because that's how I'm looking at my GOG collection right now. It's like, if this site closes tomorrow, what's going to happen? Because then it occurred to me, Gamersgate, which I think is a .com. I'm not talking about the consumer boycott. Gamersgate was a games dealer. I'm going to go there now. And they're still around, technically, because they're owned by Paradox Interactive, and Paradox is pretty successful with their strategy games. But they're not like they were. You buy stuff from there, and you're essentially just buying Steam codes, and I cannot access my old games on this site. So effectively, that's kind of happened, where it's like you can lose access. That can happen. Steam is an industry leader. I don't see that happening to my Steam collection in the near foreseeable future, but it is always a possibility. So that's something I've taken steps to preserve my GOG collection. And I'm not saying this because I want to be a Debbie Downer, because I don't. I'm going to be honest with you. My opinion, I'm looking what's happening, and my analysis is that they'll be around for a while longer. Maybe they won't be around forever, but I don't think this is the end. I don't think that's the case. Something will change. They'll find some way to hang on, some way to live. But just in case, might want to save some of those offline setup files for some of the games that you spent money on. All right, just a little friendly reminder from old CF. And before I shift gears to the fail bag, some of the stuff I actually played this past week. I played, and we'll run through this real quick. I played a game called Lakeview Valley, which is a pretty wild game in my opinion. And how much does this cost off of Steam? $15 is the ticket price, but you can get a key for very cheap. It goes on sale for very cheap. Sale is probably a better way to go because the developer gets paid. This came out in 2019, and it looks like Earthbound in terms of like the way that people look, but it's called the Murder RPG. You show up in a town, days pass, and you're supposed to like stealthily kill everyone. Meanwhile, there's like a horror movie level secret going on in the town that kind of reveals itself a little bit more with each day. Wild game. And how long did I put into this game? A couple hours maybe? Yeah, 2.3 hours. Just the combat is really bad, but the story was, whoever wrote this was clearly like one of those dudes who had a bunch of horror movie VHS tapes, that kind of thing. So that was pretty cool. I did enjoy that. What else did I play? I played a game called River City Saga: Three Kingdoms. And if you're not familiar, River City Ransom, the old NES game, is one of my top 3 favorite games of all time. The top 3, uncontested in my opinion, favorites of all time are the original Quake, River City Ransom, and Wizardry 5 for the Super Nintendo. Those are the 3. So all the River City games that come out on Steam, I usually check them out. And it's River City Saga: Three Kingdoms was $30, so I stayed away from it for a while. Well, now a couple of years have passed. I picked it up, and I started playing it. Really good game. It's like old. The setting, it follows the setting of like Romance of the Three Kingdoms, so it's like internal civil war between kingdoms in China, that sort of thing. And it's played out in like a historical drama, but all of the parts are played by the classic River City Ransom characters. So as they introduce themselves in the game, it shows the character's name and then the name of the River City Ransom character playing that part. Pretty neat idea. Downside, I had some trouble getting my controller working, and that took longer than it typically does with games, but once I got it up and running, it was pretty cool, man. Straight beat 'em up. No, not straight beat 'em up. It's non-linear beat 'em up, I think is the best way to put it. The same formula that I think makes River City Ransom games fun. You beat people up, you take their money, and you use that money to buy stuff and level up. That exists here. And then there's quests, so that it's not as linear as like a Streets of Rage game or something like that. Pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. I put about, according to Steam, I put 93 minutes into it, but a good 15 minutes of that is clearly trying to get my controller to work, at least. I will say, though, the normal ticket price is $30. No, not a $30 game. It's currently on sale for $15. If you're into beat 'em ups, or if you're like me and you really like the River City Ransom games, yes, $15, it will do just fine. And I waited so long to get this game that there's actually another one now, and I'll probably similarly wait a couple years to get that. So that's one I played over the last week. In addition to that, I talked about Warhammer Space Marine a little bit in the opening of the show. I played that a little bit more since recording that, and now I'm dying over and over again playing Space Marine. So I don't know. Maybe I got to get good. I played a game called Downwell, which is a little action roguelike game that goes for, again, $2.99. Very, very cheap game. That's one where I actually took my monitor and I turned it on its side and I played in Tate mode, which felt awesome. I had my arcade stick, the fight box that we talked about a couple weeks back, the arcade stick that has no stick. I played Downwell with that, which was a really fun experience. Tate mode is absolutely marvelous. It's a weird game to pick for Tate mode because it's a platformer. But playing Tate mode on a computer monitor was just an amazing experience that I highly recommend. I got lucky. I didn't even know, like when I bought my monitor, I was not aware that it was on a swivel and I could turn it left and right if I needed to. And it supports just the whole thing rotating into Tate mode. So I don't have to like find a weird way to set it up like I used to. So that was really cool. Downwell is also a pretty cool game, which I've had for a while. It's cheap. It's unforgiving. It's a great, quick arcade-style experience that's not going to keep you for hours, but you will enjoy coming back to it. What else did I play? I think the rest was clicker games. Oh, yeah, I played a game called Bombing Bastards. Forgive me as I try and keep it clean here on the air, but it was / is a Bomberman clone, which has been around on Steam for a long time. It came out in 2014, so more than 10 years old. And I can tell that on the Steam page, it has the old-style Steam logo, but when Steam used to use those elongated grid icons on their library, it still has that. And I was playing this, and I was like, wait a minute. Don't we actually have Bomberman on Steam now? And yeah, I forgot all about Bomberman, Super Bomberman R online, which is now gone, but there was a brief period of time where there was a 64-player Battle Royale version of Bomberman. And playing this knockoff, I was like, oh man, I missed that Battle Royale game that shut down so fast. And the best part was there is also Super Bomberman R, which is, an offline regular Bomberman game. And I had that in my library and just have never played it and just completely forgot. So that was a thing that happened. And I think that was the extent of all the actual games that I'd been playing, because apart from that, it's mostly clicker games. I still enjoy Territory Idol. That is clickety click number one for me. And there you go. All right, let's spill the beans about this mystery track, and then we'll do the fail bag. So this track is entitled Floating Islands. Again, Game Boy game that everyone's played. Excuse me. I have a copy of this presently. It's a Japanese version of the game, but it plays exactly the same. And let me play the level 1 music and pull the sheet off of this one, and you'll know it right away. Let's just let it play for a bit. This is, of course, Green Greens, the first level from Kirby's Dream Land. Oh yeah. I'm gonna let this run a little bit longer. Such a good track. Developed as a children's entrance to the side-scrolling platformer game. It took on a life of its own. Wonderful series, and if you have a handheld emulation device and you're not sure what to play on it, this one is good on all of them. I highly recommend keeping a copy of this one handy. We're going to go to the fail bag, but, it just occurred to me. We did that whole bit about GameFAQs.com, and I recorded that several days ago. Let's go see what their poll is for now. And the question is, has a video game ever made you laugh out loud? Yes, I laugh all the time. Yes, hang on a second. Hang on a second there, mate. Right. Okay, so yes, I laugh all the time in the games I play. Yes, I've laughed now and again at funny parts. Kind of. I often laugh at people I play against online. Not that I remember. I don't think I've ever found a game that funny. No, but basically nothing can make me laugh. Okay, so I think there's an important stipulation to this question. If you're asking a game has ever made you laugh out loud, does that include when there are friends around? Because absolutely, when I've been in groups. I think even when we were in when we were in Tigerfest, and it was me, and it was Hemrock, and it was Sendu, and we were playing. What was the game that we played? The trivia game with South Park. I think it was a Dreamcast game. I'll never remember what it was called, but we played a South Park trivia game, the three of us, and I remember that. Got some laughs. I've had some laughs with NG, who I haven't chilled with in several years, but he and I used to get together and play Street Fighter V. I would bring my tower, the Panzer. I would just load the Panzer up in the car, and I'd go to his place, and we'd play online matches, and we'd have these battles against each other, and there were some real laughs in there. And I miss that. It was good times. But yes, absolutely. So I can't say I laugh all the time, because it doesn't happen much anymore. Oh, another thing. Does that include online games with the banter that's online? Because playing Liar's Bar, I was cracking up pretty hard at some of the people I met. So yeah, I'd say laugh all the time. Not the games, but it's the people in the games that make you laugh. Games can be funny, whatever. And it looks like the vast majority, 70% of people said, yeah, I've laughed now and again at the funny parts, but not like all the time. So there you go. I thought that's a really good one. That's one that evoked some introspection here on TCR. So let me know what you think. So let's do some fail bag stuff. I'm heading over to EmeraldRangers.com, the wonderful EmeraldRangers.com, who has been sponsoring the show for forever and a day. And let's see what's there. So Cameron, 1391. Coyote versus Acme is saved. Sold to Ketchup Entertainment, releasing in 2026. And he posted that this morning. Looney Tunes, The Day the Earth Blew Up review, the most faithful Looney Tunes film to date. It's also by Cameron. That was last night. So big old school cartoon kick from good old Cameron, 1391. Then we come to the last episode of TCR with 2 comments on it, and I think they're both from Death Adder. Okay, so bottom one says no need to read this on the air. It's just a bunch of links for Death Adder Super Show stuff, as well as some other things. And he writes, I always feel like a cheeseball self-promoting, but oh no, Daddy Death Adder is still cooking. I shut down the Super Show for about 14 months, but brought it back. The Blogspot website is sometimes screwy, but all the episodes are on the Internet Archive for sure. I have 2 interviews with Balzac, arguably the most valuable pieces of media that exist. I'm in talks with Marvel to make those episodes into a movie. Henry Cavill is going to play Balzac, and DJ Khaled is going to play Death Adder. I would pay to see that in the theater. And I still make monthly YouTube videos. I have one account for making content and one account for commenting, since you never know when an unsavory comment could get your account nuked. Ain't that the truth? Just toss at Death Adder or at Death Adder Super Show into Google, and it's all there. Just like the Nature Boy, I will never retire. Woo! Anyways, enough of that silliness. That's a good idea, putting these videos on Amranic. Just using the virus-filled SD cards that came with it. God bless AliExpress, and God bless the people of China. Couldn't figure out the chiptune. Sad face. Kal-El, no. Gal Gadot, the world's best actress. When you're that beautiful, you don't even need to speak English properly.
Kal-El, no.
Death Adder, man, it's good to hear from you, brother. And it's awesome to hear that the Death Adder Super Show is still up and running. It's funny when you pull the plug, and you stop the old talking cure. It sort of builds up, doesn't it? When TCR was on hiatus, I definitely felt that there was nobody I could talk to about some of the silly little things that I get up to in my office. And yeah, so it does help, doesn't it? It does for me. Switching over to YouTube, we got one. This made me smile. This was from Tecmoballs, and he writes, Tecmoballs checking in after a coon's age, still Patreon supporting. And I gotta say, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. It's one of the reasons TCR is still around. So bless you. I hope you're hanging in there, and I hope life is good. And that is the fail bag for this week. And you know what that sound means. Thanks for listening to Tiger Claw Radio, everybody. I'm your host, Critical Failure. I appreciate all the time you spend hanging out with us, listening to some chiptunes, talking some video games, doing your thing. And whatever it is you got going on in your life this week, I want you to know that I'm rooting for you. Take care of yourselves. and I'll see you next week.